everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Faz.
And I'm Rich.
And
I don't know why I said it like that.
Yes, you went back into that. When did we always
I'm Rich? What is my name?
Yeah. We've questioned it many times, you know, and it's like, I like it when you go into a bit of a different tone. Usually a confused one.
Yeah, mild confusion is a state of being for me. So.
We've been doing, I've not really spoke too much the last couple of weeks, been adulting quite a bit. I nearly fainted in a swimming pool last week, which was an interesting experience. That's like,
what do you do a thing like that for?
I know, well, tried to do some exercise and tried to die, so, it's fine. And
went well, I see.
Yeah, no, I did a bad job. And I was at a 1-year-old's birthday party yesterday.
Oh, they're always a hoot.
I ate so much party food. That is it. If there's one thing that's like, so obviously the child has no idea what's going on. They don't give a fuck. Do you know what I mean? They're just like, that isn't just people invading their space. So therefore, it's really important that the adults are catered for, not the children. And there was so much food. I had 2 slices of cake, 2 different slices of cake. It was awesome. So, so I had some good adulting this weekend, which is just me eating, basically. And so I feel like I need it because Rowan, my youngest, is kind of potty training a bit. And, there's just a lot of poo and wee everywhere. So I needed a lot of cake yesterday and sweets tonight. So, yeah. You have a good one?
Yeah, came and went. Went to a wedding. That was fun.
Yeah.
Came back from a wedding.
Yeah.
That was less fun because trains decided to be trains. But
You should have drove back.
Yeah, I think I see where you're going with this.
You love my segues.
Yeah.
Anyway, straight into it then. Why should you drove back? Because we're going to talk about Driver, the series tonight. Hooray! You should see the.
I'll have more sweets.
Yeah, you should see the terrible fucking puns I've put on the blurb. They are
really?
they get bad. Like I have to try really hard. I tried really hard at them. Driver. A series. You can probably hear some children in the background that are just like enjoying themselves on the street. Possibly may get run over. Who knows if Tanner comes down the road. Driver, 1999. It was first out, the first game, on the PlayStation 1. And I have been playing that. I say that. I kind of mostly played it last year, but I've picked it back up again recently just to dabble for the podcast. And I've also had a little go on Driver 76 on the PSP. When I say a little go, complete the game. But it did feel like a little go. Little go. We'll get into that in a bit. What have you played?
Driver San Francisco.
Cool.
On the Xbox 360. And dearly missed.
The game or the Xbox 360?
The game, I guess.
You mean it's gone out the window?
No. I mean, spoiler alert. I definitely think it's due like a bit of a re-release, but I don't think it could ever happen because of good old fun licensing problems and all that kind of stuff. But
do you know about? You sound like you're aware of that. You sound.
It's just that's always the excuse, isn't it? Like anything fun, like the reason that it doesn't come out again is because licenses have expired to XYZ and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just assuming that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, so it started in 1999, and then I think 2011 was when San Francisco was released. So quite a short lifespan. But I feel like in the video game world, it's maybe just because I live in it because I've played all the Driver games, that it felt like it made quite a big splash at the time. But I wouldn't necessarily say it was a super well-loved series all the way through.
No, I don't think so. I think for my tuppence worth, it was all about the kind of director mode and the control it gave you over editing your own replays and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I can't think of a game that was doing much of that kind of stuff earlier, if any. So I think it definitely had a hand there, and by the time you get to Driver San Francisco, it's clearly borrowing cues from other things as well.
Yeah.
So kind of went full circle for me, I think.
Yeah, it was a weird sort of situation, I think, where, like you say, it felt like a bit of a forerunner when it first came out, but very quickly within a couple of years became the lesser adult in the room.
I mean, Grand Theft Auto happened, didn't it? Like, Grand Theft Auto happened.
Grand Theft Auto happened and crushed everything and everyone.
Yeah.
And it will do again soon. So Driver was 1999. I think Driver 76 was 2000, and I'm looking through my notes, 2007. And then, so kind of in the midpoint of the Driver series lifespan, and then 2011 at the end. So should we kind of crack on a bit chronologically? I mean, it'll just be me talking a lot at the start.
Oh, that's fine. I've got a big mug of tea. I'm well away.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I fucking love Driver as a general concept. Like, as in, so I feel like when I say Driver, I mean the whole franchise. That is, and I excuse Driver 2 and Driver 3's foibles, which I'd say kind of amount to really getting out the car. Like, probably when it becomes a non-driving game, Driver's not as good as when it's a driving game. But even then, I still have enjoyed the franchise all the way through, and I hope by the end of the podcast today I'll be able to put my finger on what that is. You usually help me do that when I start talking. You usually prod me into the right direction. But so the idea of pretty much every single Driver game, and I think the only one that's kind of different really is that you kind of get Parallel Lines comes along halfway towards the end of PS2 sort of era, and actually removes the main protagonist, which we'll get to in a second, from that. So that is a bit different in that one. And then San Francisco does something completely batshit different, which I'm sure you'll get into.
Batshit's the word.
Yeah. But in general, the idea is that you are Tanner, who's the main protagonist of the series earlier on, who is an undercover cop, and he is usually infiltrating some sort of cartel or mafia whilst operating as a police officer and trying to moonlight in both, really. Yeah. He has occasional accomplices. I'd say one of the bigger ones is Jones, who I can't remember his first name, but he's in the second and third game, but mostly it's kind of focused on him. So in the first game, I'd say the heavy lifting of the storyline, well, it is definitely, all the heavy lifting is pretty much done in all the F&B sequences, which are minimal. Which is, I'd say, good, because it gets straight to the point. There's not a lot of fluff around it.
Yeah.
And you are just driving in Driver 1. So I'm speaking probably from a point of view that I'd say that whenever I am looking for buying games, PlayStation 1 games, like, for example, if I just put video games into eBay, I would say the most popular games that come up that seem to be the most readily available are Driver 1 and Driver 2. I feel like there's a lot of copies out there. I feel like a lot of people have played them. How many have you played in terms of the series?
I've got the first one somewhere and played it a fair bit, but never really got massively far into it. I think I got as far as like the second city, if I remember rightly.
So you got past the tutorial.
Got past the tutorial. Yeah. Driver 2, I remember a friend of mine having when we were either at school or sixth form, one or the other, and spent all of maybe about half an hour on it.
Okay.
That's about as far as my experience got. And then heard that the rest weren't that good, and got to Driver San Francisco, which I sort of slept on until probably a couple of years ago now.
Yeah.
And then picked it up and was really, 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 really pleased I did.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Yeah. Fair enough. We'll get to that then. I mean, I assume that's, you're not like taking the piss there. Like you're going to pull my heart out at the end and be like...
No, it is actually legitimately. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, good.
I know it sounds like I don't, but that's just how I talk.
That's just how I talk and have done for a while now. Just on the podcast, right? That is in, around the house.
I'm always this miserable.
Yeah, I know that. So, where was I? Yeah, the tutorial, for example, then as well. So like whenever someone says, "Oh, what's the hardest level you've ever played?" and stuff, it comes up all the time as like almost a meme. People are like, "Oh, Driver 1 tutorial" and stuff, and I'm like, it.
Get good, scrubs.
It's okay. It's okay to have that opinion. That's fine. But also, I believe that is probably most people that have maybe been of a certain age. So when Driver 1 came out, I guess I'll have been 11 years old. And I think I've said, I definitely have said in the podcast before, like, for example, in 1998 when Metal Gear Solid came out, the very first time I played Metal Gear Solid, I couldn't get past the dock because I didn't know what to do.
Yeah,
and even though it wasn't necessarily a hard thing, and then it was fine. Once you did it once, you were like, oh, right, now I get how to play this game.
Yeah.
So I was of that age where it was just learning to play video games, and Drive was definitely the same sort of thing where I remember, the tutorial was hard, and it was almost like, I think that if you had a guide to tell you what the fuck a slalom was, or, how to actually do it, it was fine.
I was trying to remember this the other day because I couldn't remember if it basically outlined some of that stuff in the manual or not. Because I have this vague recollection of really struggling with the tutorial, and then in my head, I read the manual and was able to basically do it first time, and I don't know if that's actually accurate or if it was like a guide or something like that I saw in a magazine or what.
I think it is in the manual. I think I have a memory of it being in the manual. Like, for example, like the very first thing you do on the list is like a burnout, and it's like your whole circle
and stuff like that. Like,
and it's like, and the thing is, what's really annoying about that, and I think this is why it kind of came sort of a bit of a meme, is that you don't do any of that in the fucking game. Like, as in, you don't have to worry about like going, like, doing any of those skills necessarily. Like, you just, it's like the license that you have to gain in Gran Turismo to then play further into Gran Turismo and stuff. It does seem like a bit of a brick wall for what hides a really, really good game behind it. So I can understand why people are pissed off about it.
But for me, like, with the benefit of quite a lot of hindsight, it's one of those ones that highlighted what made Driver different for me, because I know I mentioned about the editing and stuff like that, but it was the fact that at the time it was what felt to me like quite a technical driving game.
Yeah.
Like you say, you wouldn't be doing a lot of that stuff normally, but it gave you the tools to sit there and go like, oh, hey, if I wanted to do like a reverse handbrake turn in a game, I can, and it's not going to penalise me. And in that respect, I think that's what kind of got my attention, because suddenly all the stuff that was in the films, you had a chance of doing.
Yeah.
And I would struggle to point to many other games that would let me do that at the time.
Mm-hmm. I think that you do them in the game without noticing, probably, to be fair. Like, as in, you do start to... look badass.
Yeah.
And this game is cool. Like, it's like, I'm going to be honest, I've never watched Bullet, like, with Steve McQueen, but I imagine...
You probably should.
Yeah, I know I should. Like, I know I come into your house sometimes and I haven't seen films that I should have seen, but anyway, like, as in, I imagine it's a lot like Bullet, like, in the driving scenes, because it definitely... You can see where the developers' reflections, who come from Newcastle, actually, so not far away, you can see that they've definitely got that 1970s Starsky and Hutch Bullet, sort of like Smoking the Bandit feel. Like, the music has all those vibes. Even, I guess, the voiceover, so the little bits of story that you might get where it sort of tells you at the start of a mission, like, where you're going or whatever, or follow that guy or whatever and stuff like that. Even there, like, it just feels like a seedy 70s sort of like backdrop. But even though it never really puts you in a time or place, but it feels like you're in the 90s. It doesn't feel like, like I guess the surrounds of the city, it feels contemporary of its time, but it also clearly feels like they're trying to say, but it kind of feels not that different from the 70s, really, right? Which we'll get to later, weirdly enough. But yeah, so Utana, and like I've said, effectively, I kind of had it in my notes that I was like, oh, it is a really good story, but I think that is just because it is so succinct and it just lets you get on with things. But in the main, the missions is a mission-based game. Kind of all revolve pretty much around either escaping somewhere or getting somewhere quickly to meet somebody or chasing somebody. It's like weird. For example, like an early mission is like, go meet Rufus, and it gives you like a 2-minute like timer, and it's like, you've got to get across to Miami, like the first city, you've got to get across Miami. So then you're like, right, okay, I'll get that. When you sort of think, right, I've got to get there in 2 minutes. And then actually, when you get there with like a second and a half to spare, you're like, that's fucking cool. Like, I really enjoyed the stress of that. But then you find out that Rufus is just sat there having a fucking cup of coffee. Like, he's not going anywhere. He's not like he's just like, could have given me more time, Rufus. But no. Like, but at the same time, he's probably just making me into a better person and a better wheelman. Do you know what I mean? It was just, like...
It was a test.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was just growing as a human. But there is a lot of moments of it sounds weird, but the clock feels real. Like, is in almost that is in it does. Like, is in you every movement you make matters.
Yeah.
So every time you clip another car or you get a police chase and stuff, it's like they will all have ramifications on you being able to do the missions. And I think the best players, if you will, or the people that have played it a lot of times or have got used to the mechanics of the game, will probably find that they get through it quite easily. And I certainly found it on this playthrough that I found a lot easier now, like 20 years later than I did when I was a kid, because it was obviously, I was more adept as a gamer and I was used to it and I've played it before.
Yeah.
So there was still some weird difficulty spikes though, one of which I will come to at the end. I think I've already referenced on the pod before. But yeah, there are points where it's like, it feels like almost missions when you're about to go to the next city. So there's 4 cities you get, I think it's 4, you get to go to. And every time you leave a city, it feels like you're kind of doing, not necessarily a boss, but a harder mission that lasts a little bit longer. So it'll be like, for example, chase Mindy in the U train or whatever. And it's just like, it's a subway train going around the city and you've got to chase it. And it's definitely a harder thing to do than, say, an earlier mission. Like they step it up. And every fucking time, it's always raining. It's always pissing it down, isn't it? It's like the developers are just like, we're going to make this mission hard. It's going to fucking stut it down. Just like, it's like, yeah, that's great. But it always adds to it, and the music's really cool. Dun, 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 and you're like, yeah. And, and then you just do your burnout. You're off. Oh, just get I love the repetition of it all. It feels very arcadey. Like, as in, you just kind of... And you can get back into a game really quickly. The load time for a 1999 PS1 game, to get back in after you've done that mission fail or the next mission, is very minimal. It's really good. I think that's probably offset by the draw distance and the graphics being shit.
Because I was just about to say, I remember playing it and thinking, because having had a Mega Drive, and then getting a copy of Driver, you're like, oh my god, this is like next gen, and really felt like a step up. But yeah, now you mention it, it's the draw distance is basically your bonnet, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It's like, it is you in this game more than any game I remember for the PlayStation. When you see like a shard of graphic, you see that sort of you see lots of everyone
iceberg of polygons.
You do, and I'm like, wow, but you kind of forgive it, because if you just concentrate mostly on the car, which is obviously your main task anyway, the handling of the cars, the muscle car that you drive, effectively, is it just handles like you want it to all the time. And that's not to say the handling's easy per se, but I'd never felt it in a game before, or a lot since. Do you know what I mean? And when I played Driver 76, for example, and I'll go on slightly in a minute, but the handling, I'm like, all right, this game's 7-8 years later, and it's still the same handling, but that still feels good. It wasn't you get loads of people complaining about Grand Theft Auto 4 handling, I think, compared to Grand Theft Auto 5 and stuff and everything. You've never had a problem during the driver seat, or at least I personally haven't, with how well they make the cars handle and how much it feels like a good arcade racer, if you will. So that's always a positive, even if you are about to get stabbed by a polygon, it's in the game's playing pretty well, it just looks terrible. And I guess between the missions, something that I really found with this difficulty spike I was talking about was that and I guess it feels quite early on, almost like a mission choice situation, where so you're in your apartment, and then you go to your phone recording device, whatever you may call that, tape recorder, whatever they are.
Answer machine.
Yes, thank you, an answer machine. Yeah, what used to happen, guys, is there's a phone, and then
you
could leave a message on a tape. So you go and do that, and after a little while, I'd say after about 3 or 4 missions, you usually get a choice which mission you can pick up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that I don't think it's too out of the ordinary. But what you actually find is that later on, say for example, there's a specific example in San Francisco that you come to where you get the choice of 3 missions, and I could not for the life of me do 2 of the missions. I spent quite a long, significant amount of time that I didn't want to spend trying to do these 2 missions, and I was like, "Fuck, these are hard." Like, as in, I was like, but I was like, in my mind, I was like, it doesn't really matter which mission I do. Like, they're all going to be hard at this point. I picked the 3rd mission after about 2 hours. Like, that's how long I was doing it for. And I breezed through it, and I was like, you shit. But then also I was like, that's great though, that there's some progression. And you then completely sort of circumnavigate around the other 2 missions. You don't have to go back and do them. They're not part of the game anymore. So there's a multi-choice to the game that I didn't even realise that existed or I hadn't even thought about until this time round. Huh. And I was like, oh, that's great. That's really cool that there is another way, if you will. But then, is that cheating? But then it can't be because you can't, you can't go back and do those missions. So it's almost designed to be that way. So I wonder if that is the mission you're meant to do, but you can't.
Or like a difficulty choice type thing.
Yeah.
Maybe baked into the game.
Which would be great to think that if that is the case, that is in... I mean, there is an actual switch you can switch on in the options where you can go...
I was trying to remember that while I was saying that out loud.
Yeah. So you can go on to an easy mode. But
right.
If I'm going to be honest, the difficulty of the game is maintained by the law. Like, as in the long arm of the law. Like, however much a policeman would like to beat up inside you, they whatever choice they are making, that is in it just there is definitely, if you take it on the easy mode, that is in you get less of them, but they're still hammering you, and that's what I love about the game is almost because you have got this idea that you can't get out of your car. The only thing they can do to you is destroy your car. So therefore, these maniac fucking cops, the developers must have been like, how do we stop them? Oh, we'll just fucking murder them. That's the easiest way to do. Hey, watch the paint, and your bonnet's flying off, and you're like flipping over, and these police are just like, yeah, no, we will kill this person. It's fine. This is how he wanted it to go. But yeah, so there is like the maintenance of the difficulty level generally through the police, but the point I wanted to get to really is the very last level. So it's called the President's Run. And at this point in the game, it's not really a spoiler because it doesn't really necessarily matter, but you're taking an important guest, guess the name from the title of the mission, and you've got to get him across the city. I think it's New York at that point, and but it's quite an extensive sort of, I guess, distance really, and also, but it's not timed or anything. And you think, oh well, therefore I can kind of just get there however I need to get there. The FBI and the police at this point and also the gangsters that are chasing you are fucking relentless. That is in they will. So I have tried, I would say about 100 times to do this mission. No, I'm not like I've tried it loads, and I swear it must be about 100 times I've tried to do this mission, this playthrough, and I cannot do it. Like, as in, so I thought, I'll look online, I'll try and find a guide or something like that. Right, it is barren out there on the internet, guys. Do better work. Somebody that is in every single person on the Reddit board from 2003, like whatever it is, whatever board it was. Do you know what I mean? Like GamesFAQ. Like, as in, like there is nothing out there to help you complete this mission. Like, as in, so I guess what I'm trying to say, or was trying to say previously about the tutorial, like, as in, like you say, don't be a scrub. Like, as in, get to that final mission, and if you could complete that, like, as in, well fucking done, because like it is insane. I am just considering that I've completed the game now. I'm just like, this is me done. I've pretty much got to the end. I've done 95% of it, and I just cannot do this last bit. I've tried putting it on to easy mode, and that doesn't seem to have that much. I can't see any noticeable difference whatsoever. Like, as in, and there's no way you can avoid the police at this point. Like, as in, it's not like you can kind of just like sidle along, to a traffic light and be like, yeah, no, I'm just a law-abiding citizen. They immediately are trying to fuck you up. And, it is annoying that it is so hard. But I quite like that it's so hard as well. It is the thrill of the chase, literally. I will be here at some point, but yeah, it is difficult. So in general, that's like the main single player part of it. apart from the part that you alluded to before, which is really cool, it's the film director mode part of it. So you can to actually be able to film these chases and save it on your 15 megabyte memory card or whatever it is. Like, as in, yeah, and it's cool. Like, as in, you can genuinely make something that you like, not like, cut these amazing movies or anything like that, but like, you can put camera angles on them and things that actually you think, oh shit, that looks really cool. And I just did that. And especially if your car flips like 16 times after being hit by a cop and then lands back on its wheels, you're like, yeah, I think I want to show somebody that. Like, I don't know. Just like, Sally, get in here. What? No, come on, see. What are you? Whoa, no, polygon. No, just yeah. I don't know who I'm going to show these to, but I've got them. I've got like 3 or 4 of them saved there. Yeah. And there is a multiplayer mode as well, which is interesting. Like, in terms of like, so where you kind of can do chases and things, and they're very very reductive, like, isn't it? They're a very small split screen experience, but it's there and it's quite fun. It's okay. So yeah, that's Driver 1. I would say is almost a bit of a seminal game for me in terms of the enjoyment of it, like really getting to grips with trying to complete a game around about the same period of time, like say about Metal Gear Solid and things, just that age sort of 11 or 12, where it's like, oh, I actually need to be really good at this now, so I'm gonna have to take time and practice and learn it. And it's got so many. Don't get me wrong, it's got things that are wrong with it. Like I say, graphically, it's terrifying. But like, as in, and it is very much just one thing, but it does that one thing really, really well. So yeah, I absolutely loved spending time playing it again last year, and then a little bit again this year. So 8 out of 10, an easy 8 out of 10 for Driver 1.
Putting it on the list.
Yeah. So, you got anything else you want to add in or questions at that point to just, break me up gushing about Driver?
Not really. No, I think you basically hit the nail on the head for my experience of it as well. And granted, I've not picked it up too recently to dabble with it. But yeah, I think it's a lot of it is that whole the impression you get that the people that made this game really love movie car chases.
Yeah.
And I think that shines through in, like you say, the kind of, is it the 90s, is it the 70s feel, like the handling, the sounds, even, it ticks a lot of boxes.
I mean, these guys made Destruction Derby a couple of years beforehand. Well, I say a couple of years, like 5 years beforehand, the first Destruction Derby. And you can tell they've just taken the mechanics of how that works for all the crashes and stuff, but to see it develop from that into this,
give it that kind of cinematic wrapper.
It's really, like you say, it's really cool. So how about Driver on the Game Boy Color then, as a port?
Yes, how about that?
Yeah. Have you ever played a Driver game on a? Because I'm trying to evolve here from the console into the handheld with the PSP. So yeah. They weren't shy with porting Driver 2, Driver 3 over to the Game Boy Advance or anything like that. And actually, I was really impressed that I played with it about half an hour last week just to sort of get an idea about it.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't. I don't know how. I was like, how do you actually do this to get it onto a Game Boy? But all they've done is just basically made it into Grand Theft Auto top down, and you are playing with literal boxes. Like, as in, you can't tell. That's just like, you can't tell it's a car that you're playing with. But the concept of get to this bank, pick these people up in 2 minutes, get across the city. Here, the small mini maps in the top corner. It's like, the bones of the game is there, and I was like, actually, like I could sit and play this. Like, as in, you don't have to worry about anything else apart from the core concept. Like, as in, you could easily get away with playing that and having fun. And I was like, oh, I can't believe this actually works, really.
Yeah.
And I noticed when I was just doing a little bit of research and stuff, I noticed that actually the Game Boy Advanced review scores for Driver 3 were significantly better than Driver 3 on any of the consoles.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I actually, so then I booted up Driver 3 for on the Game Boy Advance for a couple of minutes, literally booted up and played a mission. And I was like, I can understand and see how people would be impressed by this, because actually it's almost like, I'd say PS1. It's really, really good. Wow. How good that game looks on a Game Boy Advance. Like, and I was like, wow. Admit that's probably giving it a bit too much credit, but it definitely looks like, oh, this is on a Game Boy Advance. That isn't, you know. So, again, I've not played any more than that or anything, and I can't really speak for it, but I just wanted to have a little look and see how it sort of transferred, if you will, onto the handheld devices before I picked up Driver 76 on the PSP.
Nice.
So yeah, you know, that, I guess, spoke positively about what Driver 76 could be. So this came out, like I say, in 2007. It's a prequel, kind of. It is a prequel to Parallel Lines, which actually came out sort of, I think, just before it on PS2. And so the 76 references that you are playing in 1976, and you're playing in New York, and you just play in the one city you play in New York City. And the main guy from Parallel Lines is called TJ or TK, I think it is. I can't remember now. It's been ages since I played it. And but there's a guy in that called Ray, and he's the main character in this game.
Right.
So you're a mechanic, and you have a best mate called Slink. The game's really, it's a bit of a weird concept. That the idea is that Ray falls in love with sort of a triad boss's daughter called Chen-Chi, and the idea for Ray is that you are going to impress Zhao, the triad boss, to then win the hand of his daughter. But she's already spoken for by Jimmy, who's a gangster, a triad gangster. The way that Ray thinks that he's going to win her hand is by just breaking the law and just basically like stealing loads of shit. It's a bit weird, really. Like, it's not quite Romeo and Juliet. It's like
she would have to be an utter fucking lunatic for that to work.
It's just like, you know, like it's like the story progresses through, and you can tell this is probably because just for fitting onto the UMD, it actually progresses through comic book, that is in the sort of pains and animation, which works really well. It's really good, actually. Like, as in, you know, and it feels not necessarily of the time, because, like, you know, comic books have been around more earlier than 1976 and later than 1976, but certainly it tells it really, really well. Like, as in, and it doesn't spend too much time in, like, or taking up loads of FMV sequences on a PSP that it couldn't manage it. So, yeah, that choice from them was a really good idea. What was a bad idea from them was that after came out after Driver 3 and Parallel Lines, where there was still the idea that you could get out the car and shoot. And whilst there is very minimal amounts of that in the game, there's actually three different bits. There's a driving concept of it. And it's the same as all of the driving games, so I won't go into the driver games. I won't go into much more detail, but you kind of get sort of chase sequences. You drop bombs off places and things. You probably get a few more things that start to introduce themselves in Grand Theft Auto. That, you know, that you probably do a few more missions that aren't just like, you know, oh, come and drive here and do this. They'll be more multifaceted. So it'll be like, come and drive here, drop us off at this place. We're going to drop a bomb. You shoot a few guys outside, and then drive around until the time runs out, so pick us up. So it's kind of developed in terms of complexity, but not necessarily in execution. So, like, the driving bit, it seems absolutely fine. You know, that, again, the handling's really, really good. If they just kept this just driving missions, I'd have been similarly as impressed as I was with the first game. But the introduction of the on-foot part, trying to use the PSP controls, that is in as usual, to try and do a third-person shooter, of which you kind of do this weird auto lock situation, like is in, and you can get different guns, like is in, so it builds up like normal way in a game. You get a pistol, then an assault rifle, a shotgun, you can get a grenade launcher, etc. But like that part of it, the shooting part of it, it's shit. That is so shit. You can shoot out of the car as well. There's missions where you're shooting out of the car. You cripple your hands trying to do so, though. Like, the control system they've put in place to do that, and it's weird because Ray's a wheelman, he's a driver. Yet these missions kind of go, "Oh, Ray, I'll take the wheel, you shoot," and I'm like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, he's a mechanic. Like, is he going to throw wrenches or something? I don't understand. Like, it just doesn't make any sense for it to become this sort of, you do the drive-by situation, and then also, but you're also in. You're still in control of the car, though. You're still the driver. It's just like I don't get it.
That
like,
doesn't make any sense at all.
I'm like, Slink, you're meant to be like my best friend who's helping me out here, and you're in the front of the car and you do fuck all. Then you're saying you're driving, but you're not helping me. You're just being a pimp that's doing nothing. And then also the shooting part of it when you get out on foot is just similarly awful. That isn't it? It's just is it the worst sort of third person shooter I've ever played? Like, as in. No, but then as in it's very low on the on the scale. Like, as in, it just feels like I guess almost like they invited. It was like daughter comes to work day that day, and they were like, "Oh, but just build part of the game. Just build part of the game for us." You know what I mean? Like, oh, bring your son in, and he's like, like, what do you like seeing? Guns. All right, well, yeah, it's a good choice. You're a creative partner now. Do you know what I mean? It's just like that. If they're just focused on the main part of what makes Driver really, really, really good. That part of the game is actually pretty good. And I think better than probably the rest of the drivers I've played, apart from San Francisco, I would say. It is like, control-wise, really, really good. The draw distance is better than Driver 1, 2, and 3, although still limited by the PSP in terms of... So graphically, it still doesn't look great, but it just feels like you haven't got shards of polygons coming at you, and actually you feels like you're part of a city as well,
which is nice.
Yeah, and there's still a lot left to be desired from the graphics, but for a PSP, I had no problem with how it looked for 2007.
Yeah,
and they try the problem with the game that they try to do again. They just try and bolt things on that you don't need. So there's like almost there's a garage mechanism where like you go into it and you can buy parts for your cars, you can upgrade your weapons and stuff. I didn't do a single part of that and I completed the game. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't even have to interact with it at all. You can do side missions where you get money for these side missions, which then pay for your power-ups or tune-ups in the garage. But like I said, I didn't use it. Do you know what I mean? It was a bit like, oh, right, okay, well, I don't need to do that. Then therefore it's just completely superfluous. I don't like, I think it almost felt like they were just trying to add more game without actually doing any more work.
Bit of filler.
Yeah. Which you can understand. So I completed this game in about 7 hours. So it was quite, I mean, that's not, it's not, not a 3-hour game or anything like that. But, if you were paying full price for a full whack at the time, then you could sort of think, oh, actually, there's not a huge amount there. Yeah. But, I mean, there's like 22, 23 missions. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I feel like there's enough there. And the problem is that earlier on in the game, the mission difficulty is nil. Like, it's dead easy. Like, it's a walk in the park, basically, or a drive or whatever. And it's like, but later on, then you get those weird difficulty spikes again because of that. So it's almost like, when you get to sort of mission 20 to 24, for example, you're not prepared for it. You've not trained hard enough as an undercover driver. You kind of just like, you just introduce this world of hell for an hour, but like, as in, once you get back to grips with it again and you understand that actually, all right, well, this is just like everything I've learned before in Driver, I just did a different twist. You do get on top of it, and certainly I actually completed this game compared to Driver 1, which I'm still struggling with. But yeah, it just felt like with that difficulty thing, like the one thing that was noticeable, massively different from Driver, is that the police are almost non-existent, which is what provided all that difficulty in the first game, second game, and not as much maybe in the third game, but certainly like there's no, in quotation marks, enemy presence really. Like, so you can be speeding around the city, and the amount of NPCs is lacking, and then the amount of police that are meant to be interacting with you as people that are going to cause you an issue are lacking as well. There's not a lot there. It's very bare bones, so you probably don't feel like you're having as much of a good time as you had on previous Driver games, because it's just not as much going on, and that kind of provides that sort of bare bones difficulty, I'd say, really. So that was a thing that it was quite noticeable. Like you could on this one, Driver 1, you can't run anybody. I think Driver 1 and 2, you can't run anyone over. I can't remember the third one's even the same like that. Whereas this one, you can murder people in the street, and the police do nothing about it. It's just almost like, like,
it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's like if if there's going to be no repercussions for it, no like wanted level, pretty much, that is in, then why just make them passive again? Don't you know what I mean? Like, as in, not like, hey, watch the paint. Like, as in, as your bonnet flies off and a dead body, rolls over it, or you're just shooting people with the guns and stuff, and there's like a cop at like the next junction. It's like, but just because you weren't in his cone of reference, like, as in by like an inch, it's just like you just murdered like 30 people. It's like, oh wait, I didn't see that directly in front of me, so that's probably fine. Yeah, I think that, and it gets a bit. The characters aren't as lovable as like Tanner, for example. Like Slink, and Tanner and Jones. Slink, the pimp who's your messmate, is like, he must say the word motherfucker like 50 times in the last mission. Like, is it that motherfucker's put a fucking bomb on our motherfucking? And I'm just like, oh my god! I'm like, trying to play my PSP quietly in the corner. Just I need to hear it, but I'm like, oh God, this is it's meant to be a handheld game. Like, you definitely need some earphones on the bus. Like, Jesus, I'm not being like a sort of shirking Violet, clearly, but at the same time, it's just like it was definitely. It was almost like they forgot about it until like the last 2 or 3 missions. And they're like, we need to get the word fucking like 50 million times just to show our hard edge. So yeah, it's bumpy, but I think that it's probably, playing it now, I think it probably, if people went back to it now, they'd probably have a good time with it. Like, almost. Like, I would still go on the side of a recommendation of this game. I think it's worth playing. It probably just isn't as good as the good time I had with Driver 1. So I'll give it a 6 out of 10. That is in it. Just, again, as a basic core driving concept and the mechanism you play when you're driving, you have loads of fun. It's just the bits around it are all fluff and swearing and shit shooting. So, definitely loses a few marks for that. But yeah, I ummed and ahed about this. When I first started, I was like, oh God, this feels dead easy and it's not much going on. And I grew into it a bit more. So yeah, that's where
nice.
Nice. I am out of breath. I noticed you yawning there, you motherfucker.
It's a long week.
Yeah. It's a long review. Sorry. It was, chronologically made sense, didn't it?
It did. It did. So, Driver San Francisco. I mean, the easy bits to tick off this collection of notes. I'm going out of order on my notes, so this could
bang
go
out of order.
Bang out of order. Director mode's back.
Yep.
I mean, why wouldn't it be?
Yeah.
It's the main reason. Multiplayer as well. This time you have online as well as split screen, so that's exciting. I think the big thing for me was that you've got a bunch of challenges you can access outside of the main game. You kind of pick up these tokens to unlock them as you go. But a lot of them, the ones that caught my eye in particular, like you've got races and time trials and all that kind of stuff, but there are a load that are based on movie chases, like famous movie chases.
Oh, right, okay.
With the cars, they don't necessarily they're not exactly like movie accurate. They're just far enough removed to not get caught out by copyright issues, but they are definitely based on things like Gone in 60 Seconds, Bullet, Starsky and Hutch, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, cool.
There's loads of them. And it's that kind of thing that really endeared me to this game. I also really like the handling. It's heavy, and I know that sounds ridiculous.
No, it is though, isn't it?
It's weighty and satisfying, and the cars have a half decent damage model on. That means that you actually feel like you are having to wrestle some of these vehicles.
Yeah,
it makes a hell of a lot of difference, to the extent that I mucked about with Burnout Paradise and went back to a couple of Grand Theft Autos and things like that, and this might actually be my favorite car playground, if you like, because it's just so satisfying to be in that world. It's hefty, and the graphics kind of go with it as well. Like they're satisfyingly chunky.
Yeah,
there's still a bit of screen tear on the Xbox 360, which isn't great to look at nowadays, and it can look a little bit bland in a couple of places, and that's why when I kind of alluded to having a bit of a re-release, wouldn't that be good? Bit of a spit and polish on it, and get it looking really nice, slightly different lighting and stuff like that. I imagine you could get it to sing. But I am dancing around the elephant in the room, because as you have rightly pointed out, if you've got a driving game that's good at driving but you are feeling the pressure from Grand Theft Auto to have a load of crowbarred in segments involving being on foot and shooting people, but you want to focus on driving, but you want side activities and you want an open world, and you want to do that Ubisoft thing of just shoving icons across a map and getting people to pick what they do. How do you get around that? Correct. You put your main character in a coma in Act 1. If you've ever watched Life on Mars, you will know exactly what is going on.
What was Life on Mars? That was out before.
I think it was, at least in the UK. I don't know about the American one, but I think it was doing the rounds. So, I mean, Life on Mars, he doesn't teleport between vehicles. You do in this. And it's utter insanity. It's utter insanity.
Absolutely love it.
It's not explained in a coherent, or rather, it's not used in a coherent, consistent way across the game, right? So, you know, there's varying reads you could have on it, but it is quite often used for comic effect, or even for like as a core mechanic for some of the challenges and the side activities you can do, and some of the story missions even rely on you effectively hopping your consciousness between vehicles in real time. Say, you know, you are in a race, but you're having to effectively control two cars at the same time and hop between them, or you have to like use a bunch of random passing cars to destroy incoming enemy cars to protect a point. Things like that that would not have been possible without this utter lunacy in this plot. And as a sort of marriage of mechanic and, you know, narrative purpose, I kind of really like it because it is so dumb, but it kind of works. I kind of like it because you go through and you'll have these story missions, and eventually they'll become gated and locked off until you've done some side activities and all that kind of stuff. So you kind of get a bit of a sense of all of these extra little bits and bobs as you go. But over time, you'll unlock more of the map, you'll unlock more garages, you'll unlock more vehicles that you can use your quote-unquote willpower to buy or upgrade. If I could upgrade things with my own willpower, do you honestly think I'd be sat here?
Oh, right. I was going to say, do you think I would actually be able to upgrade anything at all?
Well, quite.
My willpower would be buying, like, Haribo. That's basically what my willpower is.
Effectively. But yeah, it's all that kind of stuff where the game goes out of its way to tie back to this kind of mechanic in some way, shape, or form, and I kind of got to applaud it for that. Like for its dedication to the bit, even though the bit is fundamentally fucking ridiculous, I kind of like it. Right?
I when I played it a long time ago now, that is when it came out, I never questioned it either. I was just like, you're just having too much fun. It felt that way.
Fun is the word, to be honest with you. I think if you switch your brain on while you're playing it and really analyse it, you're going to be disappointed.
You come out of your coma into your own brain. You're like, oh no, what am I doing here? No, I don't want to be here. I want to be in the fun zone again.
But if you are there to just go around San Francisco in some ridiculous vehicles, causing all sorts of havoc, you know, and living that kind of 70s to noughties kind of car chase dream. It's great, and like the soundtrack plays into that as well, and the vehicle selection because it runs the gamut from the 70s onwards, even late 60s, I guess. Even like,
is it licensed?
Yeah.
So
and that makes a big difference. Like, especially when it comes to those like movie challenges and stuff like that, because I noticed that quite a few of them will have the kind of period appropriate vehicles on the road with you.
Nice.
As long as they're in the game, you know. And the soundtrack ties into that as well. It's kind of a bit grungy, kind of a bit funky. Like, again, licensed songs. Some of which, like, I was really surprised to see pop up on the soundtrack, and really, really pleased. It's like, when was the last time I ever heard like Desert Sessions on a game soundtrack? Like, yes, more of this, please. Thank you. So yeah, like it's for tapping into this like sort of weirdly timeless but also somehow very time specific car fantasy world. I think it's actually really effective. I really like what it does.
You think this came out a year before Grand Theft Auto 5?
Yeah.
If you think about it like that point of view, that's so
it's nuts, isn't it? And
weird.
and it's, I think it really benefited from, like you say, about what was it, 76?
I think 76
having
was
that
the last game.
loss of focus.
Before that, maybe.
But there or thereabouts, they were all kind of on that slide of, oh shit, we've got to put on-foot sections in, we've got to put shooting in, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, because that's what Grand Theft Auto is doing.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, as soon as they decide to just do their own thing, it's so much better for it.
Yeah.
And, tip of the cap, I think. Like, I really enjoyed it. And to be honest with you, like, I enjoyed it. And then I got into New Game Plus, where I could keep all of my unlocked stuff, keep all my unlocked vehicles and garage and willpower and all that kind of stuff, and then just start the story over again. And just, like, absolutely trounce people.
Just dominate with your coma willpower.
It was great. I felt like a god. And like even
that because it's actually you were one.
But this is the thing, like, because the end of the plot, and I'm not going to go into spoilers because I do think you should go and play this, whoever is listening. Like, it leans into this mechanic again. Like, it comes back to this mechanic, and it uses it to good effect. Like, it's utter bollocks as a narrative.
Love it.
It is utter
don't care.
utter horse shit, and I love it. Like, it is exactly the kind of B-movie schlock that a good car chase would be in.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
I mean, granted, it's dialed up a little bit, but I'm not going to deduct it points for that. Obviously, I'm not. And yeah, I think my only, like, real regret, besides, my kind of quibbles about some of the graphics and all that kind of stuff, really, is that I didn't play it on anything with a decent sound system.
Okay.
I would have loved to have played it on something with a decent subwoofer, so you could probably get, like, the engine growls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because I would put good money on them putting a lot of time and effort into those engines, and the tire squeals and all that kind of stuff. Because everything else has that kind of attention to detail and that heft and all that. So yeah, like, never going to win any awards for narrative, but it's got some amusing bits of dialogue. It's got some plot holes the size of, I don't know, you could probably drive a car through them, actually.
Or two, by hopping between them with your brain.
A dustbin lorry, I don't know. I think, there is one other gripe. Looking at my notes, there is one other thing. Where you do have that kind of scatter of icons across the map, one of the kind of developments in the however many years since it came out is that, it's a bit easier to filter them on a map. So if you're looking for a specific challenge, because you've got to do a specific challenge to be able to unlock and buy a specific vehicle, it'll be easier to do nowadays.
Yeah.
On this particular map, if you are looking for a particular challenge, that's quite hard to do. You basically have to manually sift. Though I may well be missing a way of doing it, I wasn't able to obviously find a quick and easy way of filtering stuff. But beyond that, you're into the realms of, like, level of detail. Like, if you go round a corner and end up going into the back end of a tow truck, you'll get caught on the hook. You have to wiggle the steering wheel to get off the hook and stuff like that. It's just things like that I, like you're doing now, made me smile. I really enjoyed my time with this. I really did. And you know what? I came in here fully ready to give it 8 out of 10. And then I started talking about it and thinking about it again. It was like, no, I kind of want to go and play it again now. I want to play it some more. So I'm going to give it a 9.
Wow.
I really enjoyed it. And especially I've kind of inherited my dad's love of muscle cars and stuff like that. So be able to sit there and go like, oh yeah, like however many Dodges and Fords and all that kind of stuff are in here, and I can go and muck about with them. It was really good fun.
The best type of car, aren't they? That is in. I mean, and I think it's even on the front cover of the game. That is in. I'm sure it's like a yellow Mustang or something. As a Dodge. Yeah. It just looks so good. Like, just
you could get a special edition of this game that has that as a model.
Yeah,
like,
I've seen it on
the number of times I've nearly gone hunting for one.
So cool.
Yeah,
just kind of polish off then. I mean, that to me, from what I remember as well, like, I remember it being a really good sort of, I guess, palate cleanser, if you will, from everything else that was starting to flow that way. That was almost like, so everything had become that GTA clone, and this is almost like you say, it was almost like trying to run the sort of the gauntlet between it, been like, yeah, we need to have something like that in there. Clearly, that's what people want. But actually, we're just going to do it in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you say, probably when we've spoken about remasters, re-releases, etc. previously, it does sound like one that would be ripe for doing it. And it's been such a long time. You'd think that there'd be enough people think like we do from this podcast, think fondly enough about the franchise, or people who would just be brand new to it, and they could do a really good job of it. Whoever owns the licensing, I think Atari now, I think, or something like that. It's just like, it's crazy. I can't remember, but
I think there's potentially room for it in the world nowadays. The only reason I say potentially room for it is because you have things like Forza Horizon that do the kind of open world driving car game type thing. Yeah. However, I would argue that this is less arcadey and a little bit more on the sort of simulation side of things. Granted, you are teleporting between cars, so I hesitate to say that it's too much of a simulation. But I do think there's room for it out there, and would love to have it back.
I think that. So we didn't really touch on say too much on Driver 2 or Driver 3 and things, but I remember when I was in the research for the pod, like reading and saying certainly for 3 that 3 was really rushed out, like as in, and to try and get on. I think it was just before San Andreas or just around that time and stuff, and it's just like if people chase other people all the time, they do such a shit job of it. Like it's not the space race anymore where it's like, we're going to get a man on the moon just by bettering the Russians, or the Russians better than the Americans. It's like it just, people need to take a little bit more time and be themselves, like in video games. It feels like that to me, certainly. And when they do that, better games come out of it.
Yeah, back their own ideas.
Yeah.
And have a vision for it, even if that vision is utter bollocks. But it's weirdly
fun
coherent and it's fun. Yeah, and the fact that they tied so much of the game and so much of the odd trappings around it back to this mechanic is what made the difference for me.
I'm going to sort of finish a couple of thoughts then. So I kind of want to round back on the what it was then, and a couple of things you were sort of saying. Really, it feels like the whole franchise has that, and apart from weirdly for Driver 76, for example, but kind of like a timeless sort of feel to it that you said that is that really resonated with me when you said that there. It's almost like it's just, when it's great, it's just about fantastic driving, really good cars, in a really sort of usually good music. I mean, I forgot to say about Driver 76, that's got an official license soundtrack as well for 70s music as well. And it just, and like you say, you get that real weight with all the handling of the cars, and also just feels real. Like it does have that simulation part of it, the core of the game, that you don't always get with a lot of driving games. And
you wouldn't get it with Grand Theft Auto.
No, you certainly wouldn't. So I'm going to leave on a little weird fact that I found out as well. So, and this is why I'm like a bit like, oh, right, okay. So I completed Driver 2. Driver 2 was a 2-disc job on the PlayStation 1. It was released 1 week before the PlayStation 2 came out. Huh. Why did they not develop Driver 2 for the PlayStation 2? I'm sure there will obviously be a good reason for it. But like Driver 2, I tried to play Driver 2 for the podcast a little bit again, just have a half an hour dabble, and my disc is scratched to fuck. Like, I think it's done. Like, it let me play a bit, but it wouldn't let me play a lot. And it was just weird that they dropped that a week before the PlayStation 2 came out. It's just like,
so without checking anything, if I had to guess, I would say they heard that Grand Theft Auto 3 was in the offing. They heard that it was going to be 3D, on foot, free roaming, etc., and their build of Driver 2 was already delayed.
Yeah.
So they felt the need to chuck in some stuff to try and beat it, because from what you're saying about a couple of other times, that seems to have been the approach, is to just try and beat GTA rather than do its own thing.
It could have been a PS2 launch title.
That's a complete guess, though.
I loved Driver 2 when it came out. That was one of those games that I was just like played so much of, and it was very much the same with Driver 1, to be honest. Cool, right. Well, that's probably enough waxing lyrical or waxing cars. That is it. Bring back Driver, I think. Probably. Yeah, I think or an iteration of something.
Yeah.
Something like that, I think would be, let's do it. Like we had Motorstorm, that had a little sort of short-lived, like, driving life.
We need an alternative to GTA now.
Yeah,
I think,
basically, yeah.
Saints Row did good. You know, Saints Row did its own thing and sort of stepped out from the shadow.
Yeah.
I think there's room for Driver.
Yeah, no, cool. Okay, right. Well, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye.